The Voraxian diplomatic corps had always prided themselves on being the most efficient species in the known galaxy, which, as it turns out, is precisely why they were about to make the most spectacularly stupid mistake in interstellar history. I'm Liam Rodriguez, former elementary school gym teacher and current unexpected protagonist of what would become known as the Great Kindergarten Incident. Before all this madness, my biggest worry was whether Jimmy Thompson could actually climb the rope during fitness tests, or if he'd end up dangling like a sad, sweaty potato. The Voraxians needed labor. Not just any labor, they wanted young, adaptable workers who could be molded into perfect industrial drones. Their advanced civilization had become so technologically sophisticated that they'd simultaneously over-engineered and underprepared themselves for actual problem-solving. Creativity? Innovation? Those were messy, unpredictable concepts. They wanted compliance. Their initial intelligence suggested human children would be ideal. Small, trainable, presumably malleable. They'd studied human developmental psychology through intercepted broadcasts and decided kindergartners were the perfect recruitment demographic. Because obviously a species that communication stalked another from light years away totally understood child development. The abduction was clinical. Precision-engineered transport pods descended on 3 carefully selected daycare centers across the United States, one in suburban Denver, another in Miami, the third in a small town outside Seattle. Each location chosen for demographic diversity, socioeconomic representation, and unbeknownst to the Voraxians' maximum potential for chaos. 27 children. 32 if you counted the 2 infants and 3 toddlers they unexpectedly grabbed, ranging in age from 18 months to 6 years old. A perfect cross-section of human potential that the Voraxians thought would make excellent, obedient workforce units. They were wrong. So monumentally, catastrophically wrong. The transport was silent. Precise. Not a single alarm triggered, not a single local defense system even registered their approach. Tractor beams lifted entire classroom sections, carpet squares, tiny chairs, finger painting stations, and all into gleaming silver pods. Children who were mid-finger paint, mid-block stacking, mid-nap time, suddenly found themselves in a sterile, humming environment that was decidedly not their familiar classroom. Most species would have panicked, cried, become docile and compliant. These were not most species. These were human children. Little Olivia Rodriguez, no relation to me, but sharing my last name because apparently Rodriguez is a common surname, looked around the gleaming transport pod and announced, "This is not my timeout corner," with the kind of decisive authority that would make drill sergeants weep with pride. Marcus Williams, all of 4 years and 7 months old, immediately started investigating every single panel button and blinking light within reach, not out of fear, out of pure, unbridled curiosity that would make any engineer simultaneously proud and terrified. The Voraxian transport captain, a being named Vax, who had personally planned this acquisition mission, watched the children with what passes for satisfaction among his species. Efficient. No resistance. He was about to learn a fundamental truth about humanity that no amount of long-range surveillance could have prepared him for. Never underestimate children. Especially when those children have been raised on a diet of superhero movies, science fiction cartoons, and the unshakable belief that they can solve any problem if they just try hard enough. The Great Kindergarten Incident was about to begin, and the Voraxians had no idea what was coming. The Voraxian Processing Center was a marvel of bureaucratic efficiency, gleaming white corridors, sterile medical bays, automated sorting systems designed to categorize and prepare new workforce units with maximum precision. They had no concept of what was about to hit them. Vax personally oversaw the initial evaluation. Each child was subjected to standard xenobiological assessment protocols, height measurements, genetic scans, cognitive potential assessments, standard procedure for any newly acquired workforce demographic. What they discovered both confused and mildly concerned them. Subject 17 Delta appears to have unusual cognitive recursion patterns, droned a medical technician, reviewing Marcus Williams' initial scan. The 4-year-old had already dismantled 2 scanning devices and was currently trying to rewire a third using what appeared to be a shoelace and a juice box straw. Olivia Rodriguez sat in her assigned processing chamber, systematically organizing the medical instruments by color, size, and potential usefulness as a potential projectile. Not out of fear, out of pure, calculated assessment. The Voraxian lead researcher, Dr. Mexlon, made a critical error in his initial report. Subjects demonstrate high adaptability but low threat potential, he concluded. Recommended processing cognitive dampening, followed by industrial training protocols. If only he knew. The children were sorted into standard workforce preparation zones, color-coded chambers, standardized nutrition dispensers, educational interface modules designed to suppress individual thinking and maximize collective productivity. What the Voraxians didn't understand was that they hadn't captured a group of children. They'd captured humanity's most dangerous, resource-curious, fearless miniature humans with zero respect for established rules. Marcus managed to hijack the educational interface within 36 minutes. Not by force, not through complex hacking, but by systematically pressing every single button, watching the responses, and developing a comprehensive understanding of the system's logic in less time than it took most Voraxian adults to complete a standard work shift. Olivia, meanwhile, had begun communicating with other children through an improvised signaling system involving finger movements, facial expressions, and what could only be described as weaponized kindergarten cooperation. The Voraxian oversight was simple yet profound. They viewed children as incomplete adults, weak, malleable, unable to resist. They were about to learn that human children are not smaller humans. They are absolutely feral agents of chaos with no understanding of impossible and zero respect for established hierarchical structures. Potential workforce units appeared docile, reported Krell Vax to his administrative council. Initial processing suggests minimal resistance potential. In the processing chamber, Marcus looked at Olivia and whispered, "Wanna mess with their stuff?" Olivia's response was a smile that would have made seasoned Special Forces operatives take several steps backward. The Voraxians thought they were preparing a workforce. They were actually importing their own destruction, one juice box and shoelace at a time. Day 3 of the Voraxian workforce acquisition revealed a fundamental truth: human children are not small humans. They are quantum chaos engines with an alarming capacity for technological improvisation. Marcus Williams had completely rewritten the educational interface's core programming, not through complex hacking, but by treating it like the most elaborate puzzle he'd ever encountered. Where adult researchers saw impenetrable alien technology, Marcus saw a giant Lego set waiting to be reconstructed. "Look," he explained to Olivia, pointing at a holographic display he'd modified. "If we reroute these signal pathways, we can actually make the learning modules play cartoons instead of work protocols." Olivia nodded with the strategic precision of a 4-star general. "Good. I'm tired of learning about industrial efficiency." The Voraxian monitoring team watched in increasing bewilderment. Dr. Mexlon's tentacle-like appendages twitched nervously as he reviewed the daily reports. "Subject 17 Delta continues to demonstrate unexplained technological adaptability," he muttered, reviewing Marcus's latest interface modifications. "How is a 4-year-old human restructuring quantum communication matrices?" The answer, of course, was simple. Marcus thought it was a game. And humans, especially children, take games very seriously. In the adjacent processing chamber, Olivia had discovered that the nutrition dispensers could be reprogrammed. Within hours, she'd convinced the system to produce chocolate milk instead of the standard nutrient slurry the Voraxians considered optimal sustenance. "Optimal nutrition requires precise molecular combinations," lectured the automated system. Olivia's response was to raise one eyebrow and press another sequence of buttons. Suddenly, the dispenser was producing chocolate chip cookies alongside the milk. The other children quickly followed her lead. What the Voraxians saw as a controlled environment, the kids perceived as the most elaborate playground they'd ever encountered. Little Sophia Chen, a 6-year-old with glasses and an unshakable determination, had already mapped out the entire facility's ventilation system. Not because she was planning an escape, but because she was curious about how it all worked. "The air circulation is inefficient," she informed Marcus during their covert communication session. "If we adjust the molecular filtration here and here, we could improve environmental control by approximately 22.7%. Marcus considered this, then grinned. "Wanna bet we can do better?" The Voraxian supervisors continued to misinterpret every signal. They saw compliance where there was actually strategic assessment. They interpreted silence as submission when it was actually reconnaissance. Krell-Vax received the daily report and felt a sense of professional satisfaction. Subjects continued to demonstrate acceptable integration protocols, he announced to his administrative council. If only he knew. The children weren't just adapting. They were systematically dismantling and rebuilding the entire alien infrastructure one button press, one reconfigured circuit, one reprogrammed system at a time. And they were having an absolute blast doing it. By the end of the week, the Voraxian facility had been transformed. Not through violence, not through resistance, but through the most terrifying force in the universe, the unbridled, uncontrollable curiosity of human children who saw every technological challenge as the most exciting puzzle they'd ever encountered. The great kindergarten incident was no longer coming. It was already well underway. The Voraxian facility was about to learn the most terrifying lesson in interstellar history: never underestimate a group of children with a common goal. Marcus called the first official strategy meeting during mandatory rest period. The ventilation shaft became their war room, illuminated by the soft glow of a repurposed diagnostic tablet. "We need a plan," he announced. The other children, ranging from toddlers to 6-year-olds, listened with surprising intensity. Olivia Rodriguez had already created a communication network using a system of hand signals, facial expressions, and what could only be described as weaponized kindergarten cooperation. Each child had a specialized role. In Marcus, technology; Olivia, strategy; Sophia, logistics and environmental systems. The youngest members weren't left out. 2-year-old Tyler had an uncanny ability to create distractions that would make a professional magician weep with pride. 3-year-old Emma could produce a cry so perfectly calibrated it could stop alien technicians in their tracks. Their first objective was simple: prove they were not a workforce to be controlled. Marcus's technological infiltration had already revealed critical weaknesses in the Voraxian systems. Their technology was advanced but rigid. Designed for efficiency, not creativity. Every system had multiple fail-safes, but those fail-safes assumed rational, predictable responses. They had no protocol for a group of children who saw every limitation as a challenge. Sophia's environmental analysis showed their first strategic target. The central climate control system was the facility's nervous system. Disable it, and they could create controlled chaos. "We don't want to hurt them," Marcus explained. "We just want to show them we're not their toys." The plan took shape. A multi-stage approach that would systematically demonstrate the children's capabilities without causing actual harm. Stage 1: technological disruption. Marcus would continue his interface modifications, gradually revealing the system's vulnerabilities without triggering total lockdown protocols. Stage 2: environmental manipulation. Sophia would adjust climate controls, creating localized temperature and atmospheric variations that would confuse and frustrate the alien supervisors. Stage 3: communication subversion. Olivia would develop a communication network that would allow the children to coordinate without the Voraxians' understanding. The youngest children had critical roles too. Their apparent helplessness was their greatest weapon. When the first phase launched, the Voraxian facility descended into controlled pandemonium. Holographic displays flickered unexpectedly. Climate zones shifted unpredictably. Communication channels became riddled with child-generated static and bizarre audio patterns. Dr. Mexlon watched in growing horror as his perfectly engineered facility began to unravel, not through violence, but through the most terrifying force in the universe: unbridled, uncontrollable human-child curiosity. The rebellion had begun, and the Voraxians had no idea what was coming. The Voraxian facility transformed into a battleground of unexpected proportions. Not through violence, but through the most sophisticated form of resistance humanity could produce: children who refused to be controlled. Marcus's technological warfare reached its peak. He didn't just disrupt systems, he reimagined them. Holographic displays suddenly projected cartoons during critical briefings. Communication channels erupted with nursery rhymes and impossible mathematical equations that somehow made perfect sense. Krell-Vax, the lead administrator, watched in mounting horror as his perfectly engineered workforce acquisition project devolved into chaos. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of Dr. Mexlon, who could only stare at the cascading system failures. Olivia Rodriguez had orchestrated a communication network so complex that it made military encryption look like a kindergarten finger-painting exercise. Hand signals, facial expressions, whispers that carried more strategic information than entire alien communication protocols. The youngest children weren't just participants, they were weapons of mass distraction. 2-year-old Tyler could produce a cry so precisely calibrated it would freeze entire alien response teams. 3-year-old Emma could generate a tantrum that could temporarily disable sophisticated monitoring systems. Sophia Chen had transformed the environmental controls into her personal playground. Temperature zones shifted unpredictably. Atmospheric compositions fluctuated, not to cause harm, but to demonstrate absolute control. The Voraxians' critical mistake was viewing children as incomplete humans. They were about to learn that children are actually highly specialized chaos agents with zero respect for established limitations. Marcus intercepted a critical communication channel. "We're not your workforce," he broadcast across the entire facility. "We're humans. And we go home." The message was clear, unequivocal, delivered with the kind of absolute certainty that only a 5-year-old can truly master. The facility's systems began to break down, not through destruction, but through a complete reimagining of their operational parameters. Holographic displays showed impossible scenarios. Communication channels erupted with nonsensical yet mathematically perfect algorithms. Krelvax realized the fundamental truth too late: they hadn't captured a workforce. They'd invited the most dangerous form of resistance possible. They'd captured human children. And human children do not negotiate. They conquer. The rebellion had reached its crescendo. The Voraxians were about to learn a lesson they would never forget. The Intergalactic Diplomatic Council convened an emergency session to address the Great Kindergarten Incident. The Voraxian representative looked like he'd been through a psychological meat grinder. They didn't just resist, Krelvax reported, his tentacle-like appendages trembling. They reimagined our entire technological infrastructure. The children's rebellion had been both surgical and absurd. Marcus had not only dismantled the Voraxian control systems, but had reprogrammed them to run on what could only be described as a combination of Minecraft logic and quantum mathematics. Sophia Chen's environmental recalibrations had inadvertently improved the facility's efficiency by 237%. Olivia Rodriguez had created a communication protocol so sophisticated that xenolinguists were still trying to understand its complexity. The ultimate resolution was both simple and unprecedented. The Voraxians would return every single child with a formal apology, comprehensive technological data, and what could only be described as a "please never do this again" diplomatic package. Marcus looked at Olivia during their return journey. "Do you think we were too harsh?" Olivia raised an eyebrow. "We turned their entire facility into the world's most elaborate playground. I'd say we were perfectly reasonable." The human governments received the returning children with a mixture of relief, confusion, and an underlying sense of pride. Each child returned with advanced technological knowledge that would take decades to fully comprehend. The Voraxian Diplomatic Corps implemented a new protocol: mandatory human-child behavioral assessment, a 10,000-page document that essentially boiled down to one key recommendation: never underestimate children. In the far reaches of the galaxy, alien species would whisper about the Great Kindergarten Incident for generations. The day humanity's smallest warriors proved that curiosity, creativity, and an absolute refusal to be controlled were the most powerful weapons in the universe. Marcus, Olivia, and Sophia would grow up to become leading researchers in quantum computing, xenotechnology, and interstellar diplomacy. The Voraxians would develop an inexplicable fear of juice boxes and shoelaces. And somewhere, in a classified diplomatic report, there would be a single line that captured the entire incident. Recommendation: do not abduct human children. They will destroy you. Politely. Humanity's smallest warriors had just declared war.